Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you. Thank you for joining me for another Spirit Review video. And today I wanted to review for you the brand new Booker's 25th Anniversary Bourbon. Now the 25 is to celebrate the 25 years of the Jim Beam Small Batch Collection, which Booker Noe was the creator of. So 25 years they decided, let's go ahead and make a special bottling. But beyond that, what makes this so special is that this is some of the very last bourbon that Booker Noe himself distilled and then put into barrels to rest. And the reason for that is because unfortunately he passed on February 24th of 2004. So just past 10 years ago he passed, hence this is 10 years and 3 months old bourbon. Now that's very old for Booker bourbon, okay, because in typical Booker's is aged between 6 and maybe 8 years, touch maybe older than that 8, but usually right there. And that's because Booker Noe always felt his bourbon was at the peak right in between there. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and see how this stacks up, because this is 130.8 proof, 10 years, 3 months old, retail price around $100, okay? We're going to compare that to the standard Booker's, around $40, $45. This is 8 years and 2 months old, bottled at 126.6 proof. Now they are batch bourbons, so they're all going to be a little different. But unlike single barrels, where you're just strictly stuck to the barrel, which might have some flaws in it, the batches, whereas some barrels might have some flaws, some barrels are going to have some bonuses, and you just mix those together and it kind of all balances out. That's why the Booker's bourbon line has been a really big favorite among consumers for so many years, because of the consistency of the flavor profile. Yes, there's subtle differences batch to batch, but not as significant as you would find in some single barrels. Alright, after we taste these two guys, we're going to go to this one. This is a original Booker's Brown Wax Bourbon, which I have right here. Unfortunately fell off. But what makes it so special beyond it being a Brown Wax Booker's, because those were the very first Booker's bourbons. Created around 1986, 1987. When they were actually distilled, when they were actually bottled, but they were distilled back in 1979. Now this bottle, the reason it's so special is because it is, let's see if you can see it right there, hand signed and hand numbered by Booker Noe himself. And the reason for that was because this was a private stock bottling of Booker's. In other words, this was never for sale. If you look on the back, it doesn't have anything. Because when they released to the public around 1991 with this, the original Brown Wax Booker's, which it's brown wax underneath my top, I actually take a quality latex balloon, put it over the factory seal, and then I hand dip it in my own wax and polymer blend, and I get a really nice tight glass seal. But then if I need to, I can remove it without harming the factory seal. But anyway, this is one of the very first Brown Wax Booker's to release to the public. On the back, it talks about the Booker's Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, bottled by Jim Beam Distilling Company, 8 years of old, in Claremont, Kentucky. Also, look at the color difference. I mean, these are both, released around 1986, 87 when they were bottled, but color is hugely different between what we got as consumers and what Booker consumed and gave as gifts. Alright, so I'm really excited to try that for you. But let's go ahead and get to the actual nosing, starting with the standard Booker's. Sweet, sweet brown sugar, vanilla coming through. Caramel as well. Touch of fudge, cinnamon spice, definitely. As far as the fruits, since this isn't a delicate bourbon, it's very bold. It's kind of hard to, you can't pick out each individual fruit. It's actually very, very big and lush red fruit mixed together. If I was to really try to pick out the fruits, a lot of rich dark cherries, some plums, a little bit of apricot. But beyond that, it's just really hard to pick those out. Now once you get past all the fruits, of course you got, like I said, brown sugar, vanilla. There's a healthy dose of a really nice, sweet, medium amount of oak lingering. Very, very light touch of mint as well on that one. Alright, now on the 25th anniversary. Let's smell, let's see what that one's like. Wow. Even though it's bumped up in proof, it doesn't come off it on the nose. There's 12,000 of these released, by the way. 12,000 on that limited edition. Wow. The red fruits are even harder to pick out because the oak has definitely built up. But it does feel, you know, ripe red fruits, brown sugar. A lot of actually the vanilla's picked up a little more. The mint has gone away compared to this one. A hint of touch of the oak feels a little heavy. It hasn't become over oak just yet, I would say. At least not by the nose. But it's also become, I'm not going to say one-dimensional, but it's definitely feels more like the oak is driving the ship than the fruits that was driving here in the vanilla and caramel. This one, you still get the brown sugars, feels a little bit richer, but the oak has definitely overpowered the fruits just a touch. But it's not old, so it does feel rather enjoyable to me because I like old bourbons. Alright, Booker's private selection. Wow. Now the proof on this one is only 120.9. But the alcohol is very, very hardly noticeable here. I mean, you can tell there's some heat, but it doesn't interfere with the rich brown sugar. Caramel bumped up even more. Vanilla's there. The fruits are very vibrant, but there's also a really rich chocolate fudge aromatic going throughout. Cinnamon doesn't seem to be as bold as it was here. And the oak is medium to low, so it's actually layering underneath everything else. Touch of citrus as well on the aromatics. Not as big as like the Jefferson's 30-year-old where that was right up front, but it's definitely in there. Wow, so rich, so fantastic on the aromatic. All right, get to the tasting. Booker's Bourbon, 126.6 proof. Very, very good bourbon. Yep. Brown sugar, caramel, cinnamon spice swelling right before the mid palate. Starts to get warm, starts to get hot, but then it backs off just in time so the fruits can actually start melding with a little bit of a tobacco note. Medium sweet oak throughout. That mint that was on the nose actually feels a little bit more like it makes that oak feel like a cedar element to it as well. It almost, the aromatics and the flavor profile of this bourbon always reminds me of like when you go to Kentucky and you walk into those big rick houses where those barrels are aging and you get that very, very sweet, rich caramel, almost like a marshmallow and vanilla oak, sweet aromatic throughout, and I love that scent. That's the thing that Booker's always reminds me of. It, you know, I smell that or I taste it and it takes you right there in the warehouse. Of course, they're all uncut, unfiltered. That's one of the great things. There is a little bit of tobacco coming on the finish here, but it took it a long time to get there, actually. The fruits have already passed away on the finish. They're still there, but they're very, very light. It's just a lot of sweet vanilla caramel and oak That's the actual thing that lingers. Okay. Alright, step up 25th. Wow. If you don't like old bourbons, you probably won't like this one. I actually happen to really enjoy old bourbons, and the thing I can say about it is while it feels mature in the oak category, it doesn't feel over oaked, and it hasn't lost its life. That's the great thing about this one. Even though it's higher proof, the cinnamon has been muted by that sweet oak. The rich, ripe red fruits are there, but they are, again, they're laboring against a little bit of that oak. Really nice chocolate and call that like almost like a black tea. There's a touch of bitterness, a touch of drying heading into the finish. Right as that chocolate comes along, there's also a sprinkling of like a loose leaf tobacco. But the mouthfeel is fairly oily. Feels very mature. There is a wow, that came out at the mid palate. There is a little citrus element to it right there at the mid palate. Kind of brings up a little more freshness, kind of livens that oak a little bit. But it retreats back. And then what you're left on the finish is just a nice brown sugar, oak, some tannins, but they're not drying out too bad. They're a little bit drying. A little bit of tobacco and the fruits. They're laboring, but they're definitely there towards the finish. Wow. Very, very nice aged bourbon. Finish was actually longer here than it was here. Okay. The Brown Wax Booker's Private Selection. Wow. I wish I could have been there with you, Booker. This stuff is fantastic. He definitely knew how to pick the honey barrels. The neck tag on this one, because this one actually only came in a little bag like this, and it came with this little tag. And when you read the tag, it actually talked about how this was given to you as an appreciation gift for your support and friendship throughout the year. It talked about how there was only 2,400 bottles created in 1986, how it's not sold anywhere. It's everything that these are. You could take the very best elements of all the Booker line and combine them, and that's what you get when he hand selected these. Wow. I mean, what can you say? It's top tier bourbon. A lot of brown sugar, a lot of vanilla, but there's a really nice sweet oak. The cinnamon's there, but it's never feeling hot. At 120.9, you'd expect it some heat. Wow, it's just a stellar bourbon. Right up there with Hirsch 16. Some of the best bourbons ever created. You know, some of these Four Roses small batches. This, look how the legs are still going down this glass. Amazing bourbon. So Booker really knew his stuff. Again, this is a brown wax, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be to the par of his private stock. But wow, what a man, right? So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I did taste them all neat. I did not add water to them. I know Booker's does tend to react well with water, so if you feel that cinnamon spice or that heat is getting to you a little much, go ahead and add some water to it. It will mellow it out. It sometimes helps the bitterness, but you got to be careful because sometimes it can also emphasize a little bit of bitterness. It kind of depends on how the bourbon's going to react with that water. So I hope everybody had a great evening and enjoyed my video. Thank you once again for all the great comments. Have a great evening and cheers.